Okay, let's unpack this. So you're learning English, right? And you probably love watching movies, TV shows. Who doesn't?
Yeah, exactly. It seems like a perfect match.
Totally. So you think, great, I'll combine them. You settle in, maybe grab some popcorn. You're ready for some fun, productive learning time. You hit play, and then bam.
Slight chuckle.
Yeah,
The reality hits.
the dialogue just flies past you. It feels incredibly fast. Sometimes it's slurred or mumbled. People talk over each other. And words you learn from a textbook that just sound different, completely different.
Mm-hmm. That's a super common experience.
Yeah.
You turn on the subtitles, maybe.
Right. Maybe in your own language first, which, okay, helps follow the plot. Or maybe you try English subtitles. That's better, but something's still missing. You feel like you're not quite catching the real sound, the natural flow of how people actually talk.
And you start wondering, is this actually helping my English?
Yeah.
Am I really learning anything just by watching this?
Yeah.
It's a valid question.
It really is. That feeling of, like, disconnect. It's so common. Because, let's face it, the English in textbooks, it's often very clear, maybe even a bit unnaturally slow sometimes.
Definitely. It's designed to be understood easily on the page.
Yeah.
But real spoken English, the kind you get blasted with in movies and TV shows, that's a whole different beast. It's packed with things linguists talk about, like connected speech.
Where words just squash together.
Exactly. And reduction sounds getting dropped or changed. Think gonna for going to or wanna for want to. Plus, all the informal vocabulary, slang, idioms, and the rhythm, the intonation. It's just vastly different from written English or, formal classroom speech.
So just watching passively, even if you have subtitles on, it might not be doing what you hope.
Well, it can help with vocabulary and maybe general comprehension, especially with subtitles. But often, your brain just defaults to reading the text on screen. It takes the easier path.
Ah, okay. So you're not really training your ear to pick up those fast, natural spoken patterns.
Precisely. The goal, really, is to shift from just passively following the story to actively engaging with the language itself, using the show as, like, raw material for practice.
Right. And that's exactly what this deep dive is all about. We want to help you take that time you already enjoy watching your favorite shows and turn it into a genuinely powerful, active learning experience.
We've looked through all the advice, the methods people recommend, the source materials, and boiled it down into, hopefully, a really practical step-by-step guide.
We're not just going to say, yeah, watch TV. That's too simple. We're diving deep into how you should watch, how you should listen, and even how you can practice speaking along with the shows to really boost your skills.
Yeah, this is designed for you listening right now, someone who loves entertainment but also wants that time to count, to actively help you get better at English.
So we'll start right at the beginning, the absolute first step, which is surprisingly crucial, choosing the right movies and shows. The ones that are actually suitable for your specific English level right now. Getting this part wrong, it can really stop you in your tracks.
Definitely a major stumbling block if you pick wrong.
And once we've figured out how to pick the right stuff, we'll get into the real techniques. How do you actually train your ears to understand that fast, natural speech we were talking about? We've got a systematic approach for that.
And then we tackle the big subtitle question. Are they good? Are they bad? You hear different things. We'll break down how to use them correctly so they become a learning tool, not just a crutch.
Okay. And finally, we'll show you how to flip it around. How to use the dialogue you're hearing to improve your own speaking, your pronunciation, your flow.
Exactly. So by the end of this deep dive, the idea is you won't just have vague ideas. You'll have a clear, actionable toolkit. You'll know exactly how to pick your content, how to listen actively to decode real-world English speed, how to use subtitles strategically, and how to turn listening into speaking practice.
So that next time you sit down for a movie night or you're binge watching that series,
You'll be doing it in a way that genuinely moves your English forward. It becomes a productive learning session, but still fun.
okay, awesome. So let's ditch the passive watching mindset. Let's jump right into that foundation. How on earth do you figure out what movies or shows are actually going to help you the most? Because, like you said, picking the wrong one, even if you love the story, can seriously limit your progress. Or just make you want to give up.
It really can. Choosing the right material is absolutely fundamental. So tempting, isn't it, to just pick the latest blockbuster or that really popular series everyone's talking about?
Yeah, you want to be in the loop.
Of course. But if the language in that show is like miles above your current level, you'll just feel lost, overwhelmed. You won't understand enough to learn effectively.
Total frustration. You catch maybe one word in 10.
Exactly. And conversely, if you pick something too easy, maybe something you watched years ago and understood perfectly fine, you might enjoy it, sure, but you're not actually challenging yourself. You're not encountering enough new language, new structures, or those trippy sound patterns. You're staying in your comfort zone.
Which feels nice, but doesn't lead to much improvement.
Right? It's like fitness, isn't it? If you only ever lift tiny weights, you won't get stronger. But if you try to lift something impossibly heavy on day one, you'll probably just hurt yourself or give up.
Good analogy. So you need that sweet spot. The sources called it a perfect balance, right? Where it's challenging, but not so challenging that you just drown.
Precisely. Challenged enough to learn, but not overwhelmed into frustration. And finding that sweet spot isn't just guesswork. The sources offer a really practical, simple test, a rule of thumb.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What is it?
It's called the 50-70% rule.
50 to 70%. Okay, what does that mean?
It's pretty straightforward.
Right.
Take a short clip from a movie or a TV show you're thinking about using. Maybe, say, 30 seconds, maybe up to a minute. Little scene with some dialogue.
Okay.
And you watch it, this is the important part, without any subtitles. No English subtitles, no subtitles in your own language, just pure listening.
Right, just your ears.
And you ask yourself, roughly how much of the dialogue did I understand? Just based on listening. If you feel like you understood about 50% to 70% of what was said, then that content is probably at a really good level for you to use for active learning practice.
50 to 70%. Okay, why that specific range? What's magical about 50 to 70?
Well, it's not magic, but it's a very effective range for learning. Let's break it down. If you understand at least 50%, half of it.
You've got something to hold on to.
Exactly. You're catching enough familiar words, enough phrases, that you can probably follow the basic gist of the conversation. You know who's talking to whom, roughly what the topic is, maybe the general mood.
You've got context.
You've got context. And that context is absolutely vital because it acts like scaffolding.
Yeah.
It allows your brain to make intelligent guesses about the parts you didn't understand. You can use the words you do know, plus the visual cues, who's talking, their expression, what's happening on screen, to infer the meaning of the unknown words or phrases.
Ah, okay. So you're not just hearing random sounds for the bits you miss. You're hearing them within a framework that helps you decode them.
Precisely. You can think, okay, they're in a restaurant, she looks annoyed, he just mentioned food. Maybe that word I didn't catch means cold or late. You're actively problem-solving using the known language.
That makes sense. So the 50% minimum gives you enough context to learn from the unknown bits. What about the upper limit, the 70%? Why not aim for understanding, like 90%? Wouldn't that be better?
You'd think so, but actually no. If you understand more than about 70% without subtitles, the material might be too comfortable, too easy.
Not enough challenge.
Right. There isn't enough new stuff in there for you to grapple with. Not enough unfamiliar vocabulary or more complex sentences or those fast reductions and connected speech patterns that you do practice recognizing. That 30 to 50% that you don't understand in the 50-70% zone, that's your learning zone. That's the new territory you need to explore and conquer.
Okay, so the 50-70% range keeps you in that sweet spot. Enough known for context, enough unknown for learning. Challenged, but not lost.
Exactly. It optimizes the learning potential of the time you spend watching.
That's a really useful practical test. Just watch a minute without subtitles and gauge your understanding.
Quick and easy check before you commit to a whole movie or series for practice.
And the sources didn't just stop there, right? They also gave some specific recommendations for different levels to give people a starting point.
They did, yeah. Broken down by beginner, intermediate, and advanced levels, offering specific genres and even some show examples, which is super helpful.
Okay, let's dive into those. What kind of stuff should beginners look for? People who are maybe just starting out or finding most native content really difficult.
For beginners, the absolute priorities are clarity, relatively slower pacing, and simple vocabulary that's very closely tied to what you're seeing on screen. Visual support is key.
Makes sense. So what fits that bill?
Animated movies are fantastic. Think about classics like Toy Story, Finding Nemo, Shrek, Monsters, Inc., maybe newer ones too.
Why animation specifically?
Well, a few reasons. First, the voice actors often enunciate very clearly. It's part of the style. They might speak a little slower, a little more deliberately than in a fast-paced live-action film. Second, the dialogue itself is usually simpler, more direct. It has to be understandable for a younger audience, generally.
Right, less complex slang or jargon.
Exactly. And third, the stories are usually quite clear and visually driven. The characters' actions and expressions are often exaggerated, which provides huge clues to the meaning. If a character looks sad and talks about being lonely, the connection is obvious.
Yeah, the visual storytelling is strong. Okay, animation is a great tip. What else for beginners?
Sitcoms focusing on everyday life are also highly recommended. Shows like Friends, obviously a classic example.
It's still so popular for learners.
It really is. Or maybe Modern Family, which also deals with relatable family situations. Even older ones, like I Love Lucy, if you like that style. The key here is that the conversations revolve around common, everyday situations. Ordering coffee, talking about dating, dealing with neighbors, simple work problems, family meals.
Stuff you might actually encounter or want to talk about.
Exactly. The vocabulary is natural, but often gets repeated across episodes because the situations are similar. You hear them order coffee multiple times, you pick up the phrases. And again, the settings are usually familiar: an apartment, a coffee shop, an office, which gives you context. You see them talking in the kitchen, you can anticipate food-related words.
That context anchor seems really important at the beginner stage. You can guess a lot even if you miss words.
Absolutely. Visuals are your best friend. And one more category for beginners, especially absolute beginners or maybe younger learners or even adults who just want something super simple to start. Shows designed for very young native speakers.
Like cartoons for little kids.
Exactly. The sources mentioned Peppa Pig or Bluey. Now, you might feel a bit silly watching a preschool show,
Maybe a little.
but linguistically,
Hmm.
they're gold mines for beginners. The language is incredibly basic. Sentences are short and simple. Vocabulary is focused on core concepts: colors, numbers, animals, family, simple actions.
Hmm.
Pronunciation is crystal clear, often slower. And the episodes are really short, usually just 5–10 minutes.
Ah, bite-sized chunks. That makes sense for focused practice. You could watch one episode multiple times easily.
Perfect for repetition. So for beginners, aim for clarity, simplicity, strong visual support, and repetition. Animated films, everyday sitcoms, or even preschooler shows can be great starting points. Use that 50–70% rule to check.
Got it. Okay, now what about intermediate learners? People who got the basics down, understand a fair bit, but maybe struggle when the conversation gets faster or more complex.
Intermediate learners are ready for more, definitely. They can handle faster speech, a wider range of vocabulary, maybe some more complex grammar, but clear context is still really helpful.
So stepping up the challenge, but not jumping into the deep end just yet.
Exactly. One good category is TD dramas that still feature fairly natural conversations, but maybe in slightly more specific settings. Think about shows like Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Which is a comedy, but set in a workplace.
Right, a police precinct.
Right.
Or The Office, US or UK, Parks and Recreation. These shows have more varied vocabulary than beginner sitcoms. They introduce language related to work, procedures, maybe some light jargon, but it's usually embedded in everyday conversations and character interactions. The humor often comes from the dialogue itself, which pushes you to understand more nuance.
And the workplace setting provides a consistent context, even if the language gets a bit more specific.
Precisely. Another good area is light comedies, maybe ones aimed at a slightly older audience than the beginner sitcoms. Things like The Big Bang Theory, How I Met Your Mother, Community.
Okay, what's the difference here?
The dialogue is often faster paced. There might be more wordplay, more cultural references. In Big Bang, for example, you get the everyday chat, but also some science jokes or geek culture references, which adds a layer of vocabulary. But the core stories are usually engaging and follow relatable themes like friendship and relationships. The language is natural, but maybe not as dense or complex as in, say, a heavy drama.
Still accessible, but pushing the boundaries a bit more.
Yeah. And the sources had an interesting suggestion for intermediate learners, too. Reality shows.
Really, like cooking shows or something.
Exactly. Shows like MasterChef, The Great British Bake Off, maybe home renovation shows, talent shows.
Why reality shows? Isn't the language sometimes messy with people talking over each other?
It can be, yes. The speech is often more spontaneous, which is actually good practice for real-life listening. But the key is that these shows usually have a very strong, predictable structure.
Okay. Like there's always a challenge, then the judging.
Right. There's often a host providing clear narration. There are consistent segments like interviews or confessionals where people speak directly to the camera, usually more clearly. During tasks, like cooking, the language is very context-specific. You hear cooking verbs, ingredients, adjectives to describe food: delicious, undercooked, perfectly seasoned, over and over again.
And you can see what they're doing. If they say whisk the eggs, you see them whisking eggs.
Massive visual support again. So even if the unscripted chat is sometimes fast or overlapping, the structured format and the visual context make it quite manageable for intermediate learners. You're getting exposure to more spontaneous speech, but within a framework that helps you understand.
That's a really good point. The predictability helps balance the spontaneity. Okay, intermediate. Light dramas comedies with natural dialogue, maybe workplace settings, and structured reality shows.
And always applying that 50–70% check to make sure it feels right for you.
Definitely. Now, let's talk about advanced learners. These are people who are pretty comfortable with English. Maybe they can follow most conversations, but they want to push themselves to understand really fast, complex, authentic speech. Like native speakers talking to native speakers without holding back.
Right. For advanced learners, the goal is to seek out content that challenges them with speed, density, complexity, and maybe specialized vocabulary or cultural nuance. You're trying to close that final gap towards near-native comprehension.
So what kind of content provides that level of challenge?
Movies with really fast-paced, realistic dialogue are excellent. Sources mentioned examples like Inception or The Social Network. Think about Aaron Sorkin's writing style in The Social Network. Super fast, overlapping dialogue, packed with tech and legal terms, lots of subtext.
Yeah, you really have to be switched on to follow that. No slowing down for the audience.
None at all. Or dialogue-heavy dramas. Maybe films by directors known for realistic conversation, like Quentin Tarantino sometimes, or certain indie films. These movies force you to process information incredibly quickly, catch subtle nuances, and understand complex ideas expressed rapidly.
It's a real workout for the listening brain.
Absolutely. Another invaluable resource for advanced learners is news and documentaries. Things like BBC News, CNN, PBS Frontline, or documentaries on platforms like Netflix or HBO.
Why news and docs specifically?
Several reasons. One, you get exposure to more formal, something like academic language. Two, you encounter a huge variety of topics. Politics, science, economics, culture, which expands your vocabulary significantly. Three, you hear many different accents, both native and non-native, which is crucial for real-world understanding.
And the delivery can be quite fast, especially in news reports.
Very fast. Plus, documentaries often delve into complex issues, requiring high-level comprehension skills. TED Talks were also mentioned. They often feature experts speaking passionately, sometimes quickly, about specialized subjects. Great for both listening and learning new ideas.
Okay, complex movies, news, documentaries, what else?
Complex TV dramas. Shows known for intricate plots and sophisticated writing. Examples given were Breaking Bad, Sherlock, The Wire, maybe Succession, or Westworld.
Shows where the dialogue is really doing a lot of work, carrying plot and character.
Exactly. These shows often feature morally ambiguous characters, complex motivations, and dialogue that's layered with meaning. You need to understand idioms, sarcasm, subtle implications, and follow intricate arguments or plans. The language itself is often a key part of the puzzle. Understanding why a character phrased something a certain way is crucial.
So it demands not just literal comprehension, but deeper interpretation skills in English.
Absolutely. It pushes you towards a very high level of linguistic sophistication. So, for advanced learners, challenge yourself with speed, complexity, density. Fast movies, news, docs, and sophisticated TV dramas are your friends.
Fantastic! That gives everyone, from beginner to advanced, a much clearer idea of what to look for. And the key takeaway is use that 50–70% rule as your personal guide. Don't just pick randomly, find your learning zone.
Precisely. So the actionable step for you listening right now, take a few minutes after this, browse your streaming service, your movie collection, whatever you use. Think about these categories. Pick a show or movie that genuinely interests you. Enjoyment is still important. It keeps you motivated.
Definitely. If you hate the show, you won't stick with the practice.
Right. Find something interesting and then test it. Grab a 1-minute clip, watch it without subtitles, and do an honest check. Did I get about 50–70% of that? If yes, great, you found some potential learning material. If not, maybe try something a bit easier or a bit harder until you hit that zone.
Excellent first step. Okay, so let's say you've done that. You've found your show, it's in the right zone. Now comes the next big hurdle we talked about, actually understanding the sound of fast, natural English.
The speed barrier.
Right. It's one thing to see, what do you want to do tonight? Written down, you know all those words. But then you hear a native speaker blast out something like, what I want to do tonight.
I chuckles.
Yeah.
It barely sounds like the same sentence.
Exactly. And that's that connected speech and reductions thing you mentioned. Native speakers just naturally blend words together, drop sounds, change sounds. It's efficient for us, but baffling for learners.
Totally. Going to becomes gonna. Want to becomes wanna. Have to often sounds like hafta. Kind of becomes kinda. Sort of becomes sort of because it's shortened to cuz. Even simple things like let me become lemmy or give me becomes gimme. Tell them sounds like tell them. The list goes on and on.
And if you've only ever learned the full separate forms from a book or a teacher speaking slowly, your ear literally isn't tuned to recognize these shortcuts. It hears wadea and thinks, what word is that?
Exactly. It sounds like noise or maybe one long unfamiliar word. Your brain hasn't learned to map that sound back to the original words, what do you?
So how do we train our ears to do that mapping? Because passive listening, as we said, often isn't enough. Your brain just keeps missing them or relies on subtitles.
Right. You need active, focused ear training. And the sources provide a really elegant, systematic method for this. It's a 3-step listening exercise. Simple in concept, but incredibly powerful if you do it regularly.
Okay, I'm ready. Break down the 3 steps for us.
Okay. Step 1. Choose a very, very short clip from the show or movie you selected. And I mean short. The sources recommend something like 10 to 15 seconds long.
Wow, that's really short. Like 1 or 2 lines of dialogue, maybe?
Yeah, exactly. Or even just part of a line if it's a long one. Keeping it super short is crucial. Why? Because you're going to listen to it multiple times. If it's too long, repetition gets tedious, and your brain can't hold on to the details. 10-15 seconds is manageable for intense focus and repetition.
Okay, got my super short clip. What do I do?
Step 1, listen to it. Just listen, without any subtitles. First time through, don't stress about understanding everything. That's absolutely not the goal here.
So what is the goal?
Just to get an initial impression. Try to catch any familiar words you recognize. Get a feel for the overall rhythm, the speed, the intonation. It's like dipping your toe in the water. Maybe you understand 30%, maybe 60%, maybe almost nothing. It doesn't matter at this stage. Just listen.
Okay, so it's like establishing a baseline, seeing what my ear picks up naturally without help. And managing expectations is key. It's probably going to feel difficult.
It probably will, and that's perfectly okay. This step is just about assessment. Now, step 2. Listen to that exact same 10-15 second clip again. But this time, turn on the English subtitles.
Ah, okay. Now we bring in the text.
Yes. And this is where the magic starts to happen. You read the words on the screen, including all the ones you missed or weren't sure about in step 1. But crucially, you are simultaneously hearing how those written words actually sound when spoken naturally and quickly by the character in the clip.
So this is where I see what do you want to do, but I hear what I want to do. My brain connects the written form to that fast, reduced sound.
Precisely. You are actively mapping the standard written form to the real auditory input. You start having those aha moments. Oh, that's what that blurry sound was. He said going to, but it sounded like gonna. Or, wow, she totally dropped the 8th sound in half.
You're decoding the shortcuts.
You're decoding the shortcuts. You're noticing the connected speech, how the end of one word flows into the beginning of the next. You're noticing the reductions, the drop sounds, the changed vowel sounds like the schwa sound that pops up everywhere in unstressed syllables. You need to pay conscious attention to these differences between the text and the sound. That conscious noticing is what trains your ear.
So step 2 isn't just passive reading with audio, it's active analysis. Comparing the text to the sound, spotting the differences, figuring out the patterns.
Exactly right. It's detective work for your ears. Now, step 3. You listen to that exact same 10-15 second clip one more time. But this time, subtitles back. OOF.
Okay, removing the safety net again.
Yep. Now you're challenging your ear to recognize those words and phrases without the visual aid of the text. But here's the thing. Because you just saw the script and consciously connected it to the sounds in step 2, you should understand significantly more this time around.
You're applying what you just decoded purely through listening. You know what words to expect, and you've just practiced hearing how they really sound.
Precisely. Your brain is now primed to recognize wadaya as what do you. You're listening for those connections or reductions you just identified.
And what if I still don't get it all after step 3?
That's totally normal. The key is repetition. You repeat these 3 steps. Listen without subs, listen with English subs while analyzing, listen without subs again with the same short clip. Again and again. Maybe it takes 5 cycles, maybe it takes 10, or even 15 for a really tricky bit.
Keep looping through until it clicks.
Until you feel like you can understand most or all of that 10-15 second chunk just by listening. The repetition on that tiny manageable piece is what burns the patterns into your brain. You're literally rewiring your auditory processing to accept gonna as going to, kinda as kind of, and so on. It becomes automatic.
That sounds incredibly effective. It takes this overwhelming stream of fast speech and breaks it down into these tiny, manageable micro lessons. You focus, analyze, repeat, and conquer one small bit at a time.
It really is. It's focused, deliberate practice applied to listening. And if you do this regularly, maybe just 10 or 15 minutes a day, focusing on a few different short clips each time, the cumulative effect is huge. Your ability to understand fast, natural spoken English in any context will improve dramatically over time. You'll start catching those things without even thinking about it.
Wow. Okay, that three-step exercise seems like a game changer for ear training. And it leads us perfectly into the next piece of the puzzle, subtitles themselves. We use them strategically in step 2 there, but like we said, the general advice can be confusing. Are they helpful? Are they harmful? How do we use them the right way overall so they actually support our learning?
It's a great question because they can be both a powerful tool and a significant crutch, depending entirely on how you use them.
What's the main way people misuse them?
The most common mistake, the one that really hinders listening skill development, is watching basically everything with subtitles constantly turned on, especially if those subtitles are in your native language.
Why is that so bad for listening practice?
Because your brain, being efficient, will almost always default to the easiest way to get the information. Reading is usually much easier and faster for literate adults than decoding a fast, complex audio stream in a foreign language. So if the text is there, especially in your native language, your brain just reads it. You follow the plot, you understand what's happening.
But you're not really listening intently to the English sounds, you're reading.
Exactly. You might be improving your reading speed or your translation skills, but your listening comprehension for spoken English isn't getting the workout it needs. The audio becomes almost like background noise to the text you're reading.
Ah, the brain takes the path of least resistance. Makes sense. So subtitles aren't inherently bad, but constant reliance, especially on native language ones, is the problem.
Precisely. But as the source materials emphasize, when used strategically and thoughtfully, English subtitles can be incredibly helpful. They're a powerful tool, as one source put it.
Okay, so how do we use them correctly? Is there a recommended method similar to the listening exercise?
There is, yeah. It also involves a multi-step approach, but with a slightly different focus and maybe applied to slightly longer chunks of content, like a short scene or a conversation lasting maybe 1 to 3 minutes.
Okay, a scene rather than just 10 seconds. What's step 1 here?
Step 1 in this method is to watch that scene or section with the English subtitles turned on.
Okay, interesting. So here we start with the subtitles, unlike the ear training exercise where we started without. Why the difference?
The purpose here is slightly different. Starting with English subtitles allows you to immediately connect the spoken sounds you're hearing with their correct written form. You see the word, you hear the word simultaneously. This is fantastic for reinforcing pronunciation, learning how words look when you hear them, and catching new vocabulary or idioms right away.
Right. If a character uses a new phrasal verb or an idiom, I don't know, I see it spelled out right there while hearing it used in context.
Exactly. You're learning new language in context. You see the word flabbergasted on screen. You hear how the character says it, maybe with a particular intonation. And you see the situation that made them feel flabbergasted. That combination of visual text, auditory input, and situational context creates really strong memory links, much stronger than just seeing the word in a list.
So step 1 is about leveraging the subtitles for immediate sound spelling connection and contextual vocabulary learning. Okay, what's step 2?
Step 2. Watch that exact same scene again, maybe right away, maybe later that day. But this time, subtitles O off F.
Uh-huh. So we remove the support again.
Remove the support. This is your pure listening practice phase for that scene. You are now forcing your brain to rely only on the audio. You have to actively try to recognize the words, the phrases, the flow of the conversation that you just saw and heard with the text moments before.
So it's testing if I've started to internalize the sounds and meanings from step 1 without needing the visual text anymore. Can I understand it just by listening now?
That's the goal. It actively pushes your listening comprehension skills. You're retrieving those connections you started building. It highlights the gaps, too. Maybe you realize you still didn't catch a certain phrase even after seeing it. That tells you what you might need to focus on more.
Okay, that makes sense. Watch with English subs to learn and connect, then watch without to test and practice listening. And wasn't there a third step mentioned, something that bridges into speaking?
Yes. Step 3 introduces the technique of shadowing. This can actually be done during step 1 while the subtitles are on so you see the words, or as a separate activity after watching the scene a couple of times.
Shadowing. Okay, we heard that term. Remind us exactly what it is.
Shadowing is basically mimicking or echoing what you hear, almost immediately. You listen to a character say a sentence or a short phrase, you pause the video right after they finish.
And then you say it out loud yourself.
Exactly. You repeat the line out loud, trying your absolute best to copy everything about how the character said it.
Not just the words.
Not just the words. That's key. You need to copy their pronunciation of individual sounds, yes. But also their rhythm. Where are the stresses? Which words are faster, which are slower? Their intonation, does their voice go up or down at the end? What's the overall melody of the sentence? And even their speed.
So it's like being an actor trying to perfectly imitate another actor's line reading.
That's a great way to think about it. The source example was, I'll be there in 5 minutes. If you just read that flatly, it sounds robotic, but a native speaker might say it quickly, maybe slightly impatiently, like, I'll be there in 5 minutes, with a particular stress pattern.
Right, maybe stressing 5 or minutes.
Exactly. When you shadow, you try to capture that specific delivery. You say, I'll be there in 5 minutes, trying to match the speed, the connected sounds, they're in becoming they're in, the rhythm, the intonation. You're training your mouth, your tongue, your vocal cords to produce English sounds in a natural way.
You're building muscle memory for spoken English.
Perfect way to put it. Muscle memory for pronunciation, rhythm, and flow.
So this subtitle method is really a 3-part cycle. Use English subs to learn and connect sound-text context. Remove subs to practice pure listening. Use shadowing, maybe with subs initially, to practice producing those natural sounds and rhythms yourself.
Precisely. It turns subtitle use from a passive reading habit into an active learning strategy that benefits both listening and speaking. You start recognizing spoken English faster because you've actively processed it and tried to replicate it yourself.
That's a much more powerful way to think about subtitles, not just an on-off switch, but a tool to be used strategically in different phases. And it flows perfectly into our next big topic: how to leverage all this great input from movies and TV to actively improve your speaking.
Right, because understanding is great, but most learners also want to be able to speak more fluently and naturally. How do we bridge that gap from input to output?
We've already touched on one key technique with shadowing, but the sources highlighted shadowing again specifically as a speaking exercise and introduced another one too.
Yes, shadowing is so fundamental, it really serves both purposes brilliantly. When you focus on it purely as a speaking exercise, you might be even more deliberate about it.
How so?
You could pick a specific line or phrase you really like the sound of, or something you know you struggle to say naturally. Maybe it's a common greeting, a useful expression, or just a sentence with a tricky rhythm.
Okay.
Then you listen to how the native speaker in the show says it. Listen intently. Maybe play it 2 or 3 times, just listening. Focus laser-like on the pronunciation, yes, but especially the rhythm, the stress patterns, which syllables or words are emphasized, and the intonation, that musical rise and fall of the voice.
Like that example you gave earlier. Hey, long time no see.
Exactly. And the native speaker doesn't usually say that flatly. Hey, long time no see. There's a flow. Friendliness, often a rising pitch on see. Hey, long time no see.
Right, it has a certain bounce to it.
It does. So as a speaking exercise, you pause after hearing it, and you try to replicate that exact delivery.
Yeah.
You say, hey, long time no see. Trying to match the speed, the casual tone, the connection between time and no, and that upward lift on see.
It's about capturing the music, not just the notes.
Beautifully put, yes.
Yeah.
You're learning the musicality of English phrases. Doing this consistently helps you internalize those native-like speech patterns. It improves your fluency because your mouth gets used to linking words smoothly, and it builds huge confidence because you're practicing with authentic models.
So, shadowing for speaking. Listen intently to rhythm and intonation, then mimic precisely. Got it. What was the second speaking exercise mentioned?
The second one is called role play. This is a bit more interactive, even though you're doing it alone.
Role play, like pretending to be a character.
Essentially, yes.
Mm-hmm.
You choose a short scene or a conversation from your movie, or show one that has at least 2 characters talking back and forth.
Okay, a dialogue scene.
Right. Then you decide which character you want to be. Let's say the characters are A and B, and you choose to be character B.
Okay, I'm character B.
You watch or listen to the scene. When character A speaks their line, you pause the video or audio immediately after they finish.
Pause.
Then, you deliver character B's line out loud.
Ah, so I say the response line myself.
Exactly. Then you press play, listen to character A's next line, pause again, and you deliver character B's next response. You continue this back and forth through the scene, taking on the role of character B.
Okay, I see. It's like having a conversation with the TV, but using the actual script lines.
Precisely. But again, the key is how you deliver character B's lines. Don't just read them flatly from memory or subtitles if you're using them for reference. Try your best to match the original character B's performance.
Match their tone, their emotion.
Yes. If character B was angry in that line, try to say it with an angry tone. If they were whispering conspiratorially, whisper it. If they sounded excited, sound excited. Try to match their speed too. Were they speaking quickly, slowly, with
Oh.
pauses?
Wow, that sounds much more involved than just repeating single lines like in shadowing.
It is. It's more dynamic.
Yeah.
Because you're not just mimicking isolated sounds or phrases. You're practicing responding within the flow of a conversation. You're thinking about how your line delivery fits with what the other character just said.
Even though the words are scripted, I'm practicing the timing and the feeling of a real exchange.
Exactly. You're practicing the turn-taking rhythm of dialogue.
Yeah.
You're embodying the language more actively, connecting the words to the emotions and the situation. It helps you internalize how sentences link together in a conversation and how delivery changes everything. It's fantastic practice for building confidence in speaking in a safe, low-pressure way. You can mess up, rewind, try again. No judgment.
I can really see how doing both of these detailed shadowing for nailing the sounds and rhythm, and then role-playing scenes for practicing conversational flow and delivery would make a huge difference to speaking skills. You're taking all that great input and actively turning it into output.
It's all about closing that loop. Input, analysis, output. Using the incredibly rich, authentic language available in movies and TV, not just to understand, but to actively shape your own speaking abilities.
This has been incredibly detailed. Okay, let's try to pull the main threads together. We've covered a lot of ground, from choosing the right show to actually speaking like the characters.
I have. It boils down to a set of interconnected strategies, really. If you've been feeling stuck with fast English or wishing you sounded more natural, this whole process offers a clear roadmap.
It starts crucially with selecting content that's actually at the right level for you, using that 50-70% comprehension rule without subtitles.
Remembering those examples. Maybe clear, simple animated movies like Toy Story or everyday sitcoms like Friends if you're a beginner.
Or for intermediate, stepping up to maybe light dramas like Brooklyn Nine-Nine, faster comedies like How I Met Your Mother, or even structured reality TV like MasterChef.
And, for advanced, pushing yourself with fast-paced, complex movies like Inception, news and documentaries, or sophisticated dramas like Sherlock or Breaking Bad.
Once you have your material, then it's about training your ears. Using that focused three-step listening exercise on very short 10-15-second clips.
Step 1. Listen without subtitles first. Just get the gist. Step 2. Listen with English subtitles, actively noticing the connected speech, the reductions, mapping sound to text. Step 3. Listen without subtitles again, checking your improved comprehension. And repeat that cycle on the same short clip.
Then, using subtitles intelligently for longer scenes, not as a constant crutch.
Right. The suggested method. Watch the scene first with English subtitles to learn new words in context and connect sounds to spelling. Then watch the same scene again without subtitles for pure, focused listening practice.
And weaving and shadowing throughout the process, that seems key for both listening and speaking.
Absolutely. Pause and repeat lines out loud, focusing intensely on mimicking the pronunciation, the rhythm, the stress, the intonation. Copy the music, not just the words.
And for dedicated speaking practice, continue with that detailed shadowing of specific lines you want to master, and add in role-playing short dialogue scenes, taking on a character's lines and trying to match their delivery, tone, and speed within the conversation.
Exactly. If you consistently apply these techniques, watching movies and TV shifts from being just passive entertainment to being a really dynamic, genuinely effective, and still fun language learning activity.
It definitely requires more active effort than just kicking back and watching, but the potential payoff seems enormous.
Huge payoff in terms of improved listening comprehension, better pronunciation, more natural rhythm, and increased speaking confidence.
Okay, so listening to all this, are you ready to actually try it? It's time for your challenge. This is where the theory meets practice.
Yes, your challenge for today. We want you to take these ideas and immediately put a small piece into action. It's simple, but it will give you a real taste of these techniques. Ready?
Let's hear it.
Step 1. Go find a short video clip. Based on our discussion, pick a show or movie that you think is probably at the right level for you. Remember, 50-70%. Find a specific clip within it, just 10 to 15 seconds long. Maybe something with a couple lines of dialogue, something that caught your ear, maybe it was funny or dramatic. Got your clip.
Okay, assuming everyone listening has mentally picked their 15-second clip.
Hmm?
Step 2.
Step 2. Now run that clip through the three-step listening exercise. Listen once, no subtitles. Listen again with English subtitles, paying close attention to any fast speech, connected words, reductions, compare the sound to the text. Then listen one more time, no subtitles. Notice how much more you understood that third time compared to the first.
Okay, did the 3 listens, now what?
Step 3. From that same short clip, pick out just one sentence, or even just a short phrase, maybe 3 to 5 words long, something that you'd like to be able to say naturally.
You got my phrase.
Now pause the video right after the character says it and shadow it. Say it out loud yourself. Really try to match their pronunciation, their rhythm, their intonation exactly. Do it a few times. Mimic them as closely as you possibly can.
That's the challenge. Find a clip, do the 3-step listen, shadow one phrase. Takes maybe 5 minutes.
Probably not even that long.
Yeah.
But it's a powerful little workout, and we genuinely love for you to think about how that felt. Maybe even share your experience if you can. What show or movie did you pick? What was the clip about?
And what part of the exercise was the trickiest for you? Was it understanding anything on that first listen? Was it spotting the specific sound changes when the subtitles were on? Or was it actually trying to make your mouth produce the same sounds and rhythm when you shadowed?
Yeah, reflecting on the challenge itself is part of the learning. Did you notice any specific new words or expressions? Or a particular way words were linked together that surprised you? Thinking about what you learned makes it stick better.
Definitely. And building on that challenge, here's something to think about. Consider just how much language was packed into those few seconds you focused on.
It's amazing when you stop and analyze it.
Right. In just 10 or 15 seconds, you probably had vocabulary, grammar, maybe an idiom, specific pronunciation points like connected speech, rhythm, intonation, maybe even cultural references or assumptions embedded in the dialogue.
It's incredibly dense. All that rich, authentic, real-world language is just sitting there in every scene, every line. But you only really unlock it when you shift from just passively watching the story to actively engaging with the language itself using techniques like these.
It makes you realize that even a scene you've watched a dozen times, maybe from your favorite movie, could become a brand new learning opportunity if you approached it actively with these listening and shadowing techniques. There's always more to discover in the language itself.
Absolutely. It changes how you view entertainment. It becomes a learning resource too.
So true. Now, speaking of situations where you need to understand language, what about those times when you don't have the visuals? When you can't see the actors' faces, their gestures, the context on screen?
You mean situations where it's purely audio?
Exactly. Like
Ah.
maybe the most dreaded one for many English learners, making or receiving a phone call.
Oh yeah, phone calls. The ultimate listening challenge for many.
It's incredibly tough, isn't it? Because all those visual clues that help so much when watching TV, lip movements, facial expressions, body language, the setting, they're all gone.
Completely gone. You are 100% reliant on just your ears to understand and just your voice to respond. There's no safety net of visual context. Plus, you might be dealing with bad connections, different accents, background noise.
It feels like the difficulty level just skyrockets compared to watching something or even a face-to-face conversation.
It really does. It requires a specific set of listening and speaking skills and strategies for coping when communication breaks down, which happens easily on the phone. But it's such a necessary skill for work, for appointments, for everyday life in an English-speaking environment.
Absolutely essential. And that's why, drumroll please, our next deep dive is going to tackle exactly that, handling phone calls in English.
We're going straight for that challenge. We want to give you the practical language, the specific phrases, and the techniques you need to feel much more confident when you pick up the phone or need to make a call in English.
So what kind of things will we cover?
Go right down to the nuts and bolts. Like, how do you actually start a phone call naturally in different situations? Formal, informal. How do you end a call politely and efficiently without just trailing off awkwardly? We need to go beyond just hello and...
Definitely need smoother starts and ends. What else?
We'll load you up with really useful, practical phrases for common phone tasks. Things like making an appointment, maybe changing an appointment, how to call a company, to ask for specific information, how to leave a clear and effective voicemail message if needed.
Oh, voicemail. Another tricky one. Good.
And crucially, we will equip you with strategies for dealing with those moments of panic when you just don't understand what the other person said.
Yes. What do you say decides what? Or sorry.
Exactly. How do you politely ask someone to repeat themselves? Maybe ask them to speak more slowly. How do you confirm that you've understood important information correctly, like confirming details for an appointment when you can't see them nodding? We'll give you specific phrases for all of that.
Okay, that sounds incredibly useful. Essential, even. If phone calls in English make you nervous, that next deep dive sounds like a must listen. It's tackling a very specific, high stakes, audio only communication challenge.
Absolutely. We aim to give you concrete tools, phrases, and tactics that will help you feel much more prepared and in control the next time the phone rings or you need to dial.
Fantastic. Well, until then, take all the techniques we discussed today, try out that challenge. Start making your movie and TV time really count towards boosting your English.
Remember, learning doesn't have to be a chore. Integrating it with things you genuinely enjoy, like watching great shows, is one of the most sustainable and effective ways to make progress.
So start watching, start listening actively, start shadowing those lines. Unlock the language hidden in your favorite entertainment.
Give it a go, and let us know how you get on.
And until our next deep dive all about conquering phone calls, keep talking, keep practicing, and enjoy learning English.
Bye for now.